a dead neighbor came to me. Aunt Ira was always cheerful. She strove to achieve her goals but remained kind and gracious. A wonderful, in other words, person. At the end of 2010, everything changed. The diagnosis stunned all around my neighbor: lung cancer. It seems that in early stages the disease is more or less treatable. At least it can be contained. But in this case, there was no hope. The woman was very sick. She wouldn't get out of bed. Then she would regain consciousness, and then she would fall back into oblivion. Her husband thought that the agony would never end. One day, Aunt Ira began to whisper something, tossing and turning, and then her voice fell silent. No, she wasn't dead yet. An ambulance came and they took the poor woman to the hospital. Within 3 days, Irina was gone. And then everything as it should be in such situation. Burial in church and modest burial at the local cemetery. Tears, groans, inconsolable relatives. All the neighbors came to see the good woman off to her last journey. At the wake to the first strange thing happened. The table where I sat decorated the photo of the deceased in a black frame with a ribbon. Aunt Ira was young and fresh in it, smiling. For a moment it seemed to me that the smile was gone from her face. Instead of it came some kind of animal grin. Was I frightened? I almost went gray in the face. But at the same time, with a horror, a thought clearly came to my mind. Just 3 words. Death isn't the beginning of beginnings. At that moment, I didn't even pay much attention to the thought. I only thought about the phrase which flashed in my head at the wake 3 days later, at night. As usual, I lay down on my bed, read some nonsense before going to bed, and turned off the light. And no, I didn't fall asleep. I was laying there, clutching a rubber band in my hand in the shape of a ring. I thought about how changeable life is. The same Aunt Ira 6 months ago, she was walking around the yard with a happy smile on her face. And now she lies in grave, in the sepulchral darkness and silence. She must be as pale as a sheet by now. I caught some strange movement on the side with my sideways vision. It was strange. No one could have been there. My parents had been asleep in the next room for a long time, and I had never kept pets in my life. But there was a moment. Turning my head to the left, I realized that the door was slowly opening, faster and faster. In a couple of seconds, on the threshold was an Aunt Ira. Well, yes, the same one who, according to my calculation, had already managed to pale in the coffin under the ground. Her face was distorted by hatred. The dead woman looked horribly. No, not ugly. Evil. I almost physically felt all the hellish anger that emanated from her cold body. The dead woman didn't think about it for long. She threw herself at me with her mouth wide open in an unkind smile, and her eyes bulging. The first thing that came to my mind was to put my legs out. I did, in fact, and after that Aunt Ira, or whatever she was pretending to be, flew away from me to the other end of the room. I thought I had gotten away with it, but no. A few seconds later, the attack was repeated. I don't know how much time had passed since the first attack, but soon my body was covered in sticky sweat, and I was beginning to tire. The dead woman, on the other hand, was resolutely throwing herself at me, trying to scratch my skin with her nails and aiming somewhere just below my neck. I only later realized that she was trying to tear the cross off me. She didn't like it, the devilish brat, and there was no surprise. I couldn't smell the dead woman's breath, and it didn't seem to be there, but I did hear a few words. Most of it swearing, but in between the imprinted swearing, I could hear, "I'll bite you," in some inhuman growling voice, with hatred. I could clearly feel that if she had the chance, she would have chewed me to death. That was probably why she had come to me. Suddenly the phone rang. The dead woman flinched, looked at the glowing screen on the cell phone, and left the room with a quick step, slamming the door loudly behind her. I had no idea who was calling. The number was unfamiliar, and I didn't really want to answer the phone at night. I lay on the bed, breathing heavily. I tried to convince myself that everything that had happened was a nightmare. I fell asleep with that thought, but in the morning my hopes shattered into defiant dust. There were handprints on the shape of human hands. My whole chest was scratched. There were several fresh bruises on my stomach, and the most of all, the smell in the room. No, there was no stench of decomposing flesh or any internal sulfur. There was a persuasive ambience of formalin, the same formalin that is used in the morgue. Aunt Ira never came to see me again, and none of her friends and relatives complained about the night visits. Maybe the fact that after the incident described above, I hung several icons in the room and sprinkled holy water on the bed before going to bed played a role. Who knows? But sometimes in inclement weather, when a thunderstorm is raging outside the window and the wind seems to be trying to break through the brick walls of the house, I hear from somewhere in the distance Havel whisper, "I'll buy."